I wanna always ask like someone like Johnny Harris like how they feel about Donald Trump and his
I mean, well, I
campaign in
think like
2016.
it's really clear. Like it seems like he's doing a wind up to be like he did some bad stuff, but get ready for this because this guy who did some bad stuff, he also did some good stuff.
On that note, I do wanna move on to Johnny Harris. Are you familiar with this person? He used to work at Vox. He's has a great team of editors. We call him CIA Johnny Harris as a joke, but he made a video.
I mean,
Was
yeah,
Henry
he does. That whole place is lit like it's supposed to be in Zero Dark 30.
Yeah, he made a new video called "Was Henry Kissinger a War Criminal?" in which I assume he's going to both sides his legacy. I'm going to share my screen with you. Hold on one second. Here it is, and then I'm going to go pee really quickly too because I have been holding it in since this Spencer interview as well. I'm going to start it, and you can get a better understanding of what's going on right now. Can you hear it?
Yep.
Okay.
Powerful figures in American politics is dead. Kissinger was an American diplomat and political scientist. He served as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State under 2 presidents. And his career is full of a lot. Some laudable achievements, such as normalizing relations with China,
his career
but
is
also
full of a lot.
Full of some actions that many call war crimes. Many of you watching are 100% positive that Henry Kissinger is a war criminal. Others might see Kissinger as a brilliant leader who helped the US navigate very uncertain times during the Cold War. I actually met Henry Kissinger once. I was working at a think tank in DC where he was a counselor and trustee. And frankly, I didn't glean much about this guy's character in our little meeting. But since then, we've gotten to know him, at least his career. We've studied him and his actions, both the good and the bad. So today I want to look at this man, Henry Kissinger. I want to look at what he did and evaluate what we can learn from this person who, for better or worse, has played an influential role in how American power is wielded on the global stage.
On this, perhaps the most gentle and graceful land in all of Asia, President Nixon and Mr. Kissinger unleashed 100,000 tons of bombs.
Henry Kissinger was born on May 27, 1923 in Germany. When he was a teenager, his family left Germany for the United States, fleeing oppression from the Nazis. He went to Harvard and later was drafted into the army during World War II, serving in a counterintelligence role. After the war, he returned to Harvard and pursued a PhD in political science. Kissinger made a name for himself as a political theorist and author. He focused on the role of nuclear weapons and this new...
I'm gonna pause it immediately. This is like, I mean, I guess, are you familiar with the stuff that he did during World War II, like, or at all, or no?
Yeah, the intelligence work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like loosely. I mean, I'm just kind of. I think it's like super funny that this guy. I mean, it's yeah. I'm like waiting for this to be a bit more than Wikipedia, but like, it's so far it's. I'm learning a lot about. Also, he's like when I was working at a think tank, I met Henry Kissinger.
Wait, he met Henry Kissinger? Oh my God, he is not beating the CIA allegations.
No, and well, and it's
NATO too.
Well, and also, well, then he says this thing like we've studied his career, we've and it's like, who the fuck is this we? Like, like part of me, like, so I don't know if the CIA Johnny character is a friend of yours, but he's no friend of mine.
But he is a meme in this community. I mean, I watch his videos; they're very well produced. Usually, I think he's the
it's well produced. The script sucks, is what I'm really saying.
Well, his style is very much so like, hey, a lot of the stuff we did in the past was bad and wrong, but like what we're doing now is actually fine and good. Like that classic liberal guy who's like whenever something gets declassified and the in American public consciousness, we can like openly admit that it's bad. He will turn around and openly admit it's bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
While still using that legitimacy.
I want to see what happens when he gets to the part where Henry Kissinger actually does the war crimes.
Yeah, let's see.
Geopolitics that had emerged after World War II. He studied a political philosophy called realpolitik, which emphasizes how countries gain power by reacting practically to conflicts and situations.
Why? By the way, so many like people that talk about Henry Kissinger, they don't have that same smoke for like Mersheimer. You know what I mean? Like why? Why is it?
It's because like they are. are ill-informed, and because the realpolitik thing is just like mumbo jumbo, frankly. I mean, like realpolitik is a real thing and like system of beliefs that can guide how people think about foreign policy. Just the thing is, Kissinger didn't evince those over the course of his career. Like, he selectively used certain principles of them, and he cultivated the mystique of being somebody like that because it jibed with his image as a truth teller and as a wise counselor. It's very easy to see. Yeah, I mean, and also it's just like, truthfully, like, it's very easy to lie and say like it was practical to kill all these people. And nobody will ever really press you on it in our political system. So it's like he can get away with this for like decades because it's like, yeah, like people will just take that as a granted that that's an okay assumption, that there is a situation that is conceivable where you kill 1 million people and it's fine.
Yeah. As opposed to based on ideology or values. But from my reading, what made Kissinger powerful was his ability to connect with people, to network in Washington, D.C. That was perhaps his greatest asset. And the thing,
yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. It's just
keep playing. I just want to see how he talks about this.
Yeah, I mean, his ability is to suck ass. Like, he's very good at ass sucking.
It's like,
his ability, but he thinks, John Harris thinks that's a positive. I don't. That's the difference.
Thing that kept him close to power. This was later exemplified by the fact that Kissinger served under both Republican and Democratic presidents. You can start to see Kissinger's realpolitik and networking skills in full action well before he ever stepped foot in the White House. According to this archived document from Nixon's chief of staff, early in his career when he was working for the Democratic president LBJ as an advisor on Vietnam, he cozied up to the Democrats' political opponent, Richard Nixon, who was running for president. So he cozies up to Nixon and conspires to pass Nixon information about secret Vietnam War peace talks happening in Paris. Nixon could potentially use this information that he got from Kissinger to prevent the peace talks from going well,
thank God, thank God, good thing to do. It's funny. Like, I mean, I don't know. I want to always ask, like, someone like Johnny Harris, like, how they feel about, Donald Trump and his campaign
I think,
in 2016.
Like, it's really clear, like, he's doing like I'm curious, but like, it seems like he's doing a wind up to be like, he did some bad stuff, but get ready for this, because this guy who did some bad stuff, he also did some good stuff. And listen, like, Hooplehead, if you want the good stuff, you gotta
do the bad.
I'm gonna guess. I'm not a betting man, but I'll bet that's where this is going.
I mean, even thus far, like, framing something that could be akin to treason is like good networking is
like literally Lyndon Johnson didn't reveal it publicly, even though he had caught Kissinger doing this. I think because of wiretaps. It was because it was like, I think it'll completely flip the 1968 election. I don't know if it's having any impact, and I don't think it's worth causing a civil war because of that. It's a very I mean, all right, let's see how we keep.
In turn, would going. Make the Democrats look bad, since they were the ones in power, and help pave the way for Nixon to win the presidency. Now, there's a significant debate on whether or not all of this sort of backroom deal thing had any impact on the peace talks. But what I care about in this little story is what it shows about Henry Kissinger. That he was willing to go to these lengths to betray the president he was working for and to cozy up to a candidate who he hated but thought could potentially win the presidency. To pass on information that could potentially compromise the peace talks that might end the war in Vietnam. Anyway, the peace talks did indeed break down, the day before the presidential election, no less. Nixon ended up winning. And Kissinger, this political theorist turned power-hungry networker, had shown that he was willing to sabotage peace talks in the name of gaining favor in the eyes of a powerful man. Nixon appointed Kissinger as his national security advisor, giving him an unprecedented level of control. Control over what he could use the American power machine to do on the global stage, all in the name of national security.
No cap detected. This is very good.
No, so far so good. A lot of people were telling me he's fucking Mr. CIA in this one, but so far not bad.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see where the turn comes, but so far so good.
Really know what this was like to live during the 60s and 70s, when kind of everything was about the Cold War and specifically Vietnam. So now you have Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon overseeing this war. It was a war that was no closer to ending. A war that, remember, these two conspired to lengthen so that together they could end it and score Nixon political points. And this leads us to perhaps the most infamous of Kissinger's sins. There's a reason why Anthony Bourdain said, quote, "Once you've been to Cambodia, you'll never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands." That's because in March 1969, Kissinger directed the US Air Force to fly over Vietnam's neighbor, Cambodia, a neutral third party, and to drop bombs everywhere.
By the way, his involvement on the bombing campaign is like far beyond even like far beyond like anyone.
He literally picked the targets.
Yeah, like anyone in that position, I feel like leading up to this moment was not disinvolved in exactly where to bomb. Like picking targets is crazy.
No, and it was also meant to keep people out of the loop. Like it was meant to make sure. So because Kissinger basically, in between the election of Nixon and his inauguration, Kissinger put together a plan to remake the National Security Council from this kind of, bureaucratic intelligence analysis and centralization division to basically being like, the end all be all for anything to get, to reach the president. And Kissinger asserted all that power and kind of, just put it up on a plate for Nixon and designed it so that Nixon could insulate all of this Cambodia decision making from the rest of the government. And this included the Secretary of Defense, Melvin Laird, who didn't oppose bombing Cambodia, but opposed the idea of doing it secretly, and then Secretary of State William Rogers, both of whom Kissinger wanted, Kissinger eventually wanted and took Rogers' job, but he hated both men and saw them as threats to his own pole position within the White House.
For chatters who are asking why did they bomb a neutral country, because they considered it to be of strategic interest, because the Ho Chi Minh Trail existed where they suspected that the Vietnamese army was getting weapons through through the border, basically. That's it.
President Nixon and Mr. Kissinger
because the enemy walked through parts of it, or so was thought.
Unleashed 100,000 tons of bombs, the equivalent of 5 Hiroshimas. The bombing was their personal decision. Illegally and secretly, they bombed Cambodia, a neutral country, back to the Stone Age.
The goal was to eliminate North Vietnamese supply lines and strongholds that were in Cambodia, but the response was carpet bombing. Carpet bombing is indiscriminate. It has unknown targets, which means that civilians usually get caught in the crossfire. So now you have B-52s raining down hell from the sky at all hours of the day.
I'll explain it like this for all the Zoomers. They had terror tunnels with terror babies in Cambodia. That's why. Okay? They had tunnels of terror. So that's why they just like indiscriminately bombed areas of high civilian population density.
It's worse than that, dude. It's worse than that because Nixon believed that. So there were two communist fighting forces. There was the PAVN, which is the People's Army of North Vietnam, and then you had the NLF's fighting force, which I guess is called like the VC in America. But these two fighting forces were like Nixon believed that the NLF's military command was in Cambodia, and so he believed like the evidence shows that Nixon believed that they were taking out the Viet military leadership there, when in reality they were bombing the poorest part of one of the poorest countries in the world, like Holocaust levels for years essentially.
Yeah.
Homes were reduced to rubble, entire villages were turned immediately into refugees, and what the record shows, that came out later, is that all of this indiscriminate bombing, this slaughter from above, was approved by and then concealed by Henry Kissinger.
Approved isn't strong enough. Like Kissinger literally picked the targets. This was Kissinger's baby. So, but that's semantic almost. It's just I want to emphasize that it really was.
Yeah. No, for sure.
This map that you're looking at is not some stylized representation of this. This is actual data. We have the data of every bomb hundreds of thousands of bombs that were dropped on Cambodia during this time. All in all, at least 100.
I mean, to be fair, like it's just, even when you think about like the authorized actions that the American government took in Vietnam, you look at like South Vietnam and what they did there, and it's like, you know what I mean? They're fucking god awful. And belligerent across the board everywhere, unconditionally.
And we also, like, this is just Cambodia. Laos was was bombed even more heavily. And you know, like, it's yeah, no, this is like this is just the part that like Kissinger created, you know, Kissinger engineer. I mean, like, one journalist, he very famously wrote a book about this called Sideshow. Like, this was just one element of it.
Yeah.
100,000 Cambodians died in all of this. 2 million were made homeless. And this is in a country of only 7 million people. In total, the US dropped 2,756,000 tons of bombs on Cambodia. Many of these bombs went undetonated, turning the country into a minefield of undetonated explosives that still exist today.
Oh, yeah.
And perhaps more significantly, contributing to the destabilizing of this country, making way for a violent communist party to rise to power with a vengeance, leading to a mass genocide. All of this happened.
I mean, dude, it's like the classic, like, Pol Pot, communist leader Pol Pot.
Yeah, Paul. I mean, it's like, you know, it's like they were only notionally Marxist, but like I said, I want to kind of leave that a little mysterious for the moment, just because big things.
But like,
coming.
yeah, I mean, let's see what he has to say about Henry Kissinger's opinion on. Henry Kissinger is obviously an anti-communist, so I wonder what he will say about his dealings with the Khmer Rouge.
Generally,
happened in secret, without the approval of Congress. It was Henry Kissinger, this one man, wielding his deftly gotten power to ruthlessly get what he wanted at any cost. As the endless war was near its end, peace negotiations kept breaking down. In response, Kissinger sent another round of brutal bombings around Christmas 1972 in an effort to force the North Vietnamese back to the negotiating table. And I'm not exaggerating here. Like, Kissinger literally said, quote, "We bombed the North Vietnamese into accepting our concessions." Some historians argue that the bombings had little effect on the peace talks and instead only...
Yeah.
I mean, this is the other thing, is like Kissinger. So this isn't happening in isolation. Kissinger is also going to the Soviet Union and lobbying them essentially to try and, because they're the primary patrons of the North Vietnamese. And he's like, Kissinger earnestly believed, evidently, that like he could, like, you know, take the, you know, because the Soviets desperately wanted to ease tensions with the U.S. And Kissinger thought that he could use that into getting them to back off North Vietnam, when like that just wasn't the state. Had Kissinger been listening to his State Department, they probably would have told him that's not going to happen. And so he's, you know, doing like he was always engaged in this game of trying to apply as much pressure as possible on Hanoi to increase America's position. But this guy, he keeps saying, like, some historians argue whatever, but like he shouldn't do that, because the record by this point is pretty clear. None of it mattered. Like the way that things wound up meant that, like, Kissinger's, you know, none of his interventions changed anything in the end, except that more people died. Lots more people died.
Another identical parallel to, let's say, sieging and absolutely eviscerating, let's say, northern Gaza, only to have a 6-day truce where Hamas and Islamic Jihad openly still continue operating out of North Gaza, which is supposed to be under siege, where they reveal hostages that some of which were in tunnel systems, but others were in fucking houses. It's like, what happened there? Like the bombing is supposedly the reason.
I mean, it's an important point. These bombing like this, and this guy made an important point about how, like, what's the point of carpet bombing? You know, and how similar it looks and is in effect to what a lot of people today call strategic bombing. Like, the reality is that, like, it's it's meant to achieve the same purpose. And, you know,
you're laughing because my dad gave me my food as you're on every time. I always end up eating while you're on.
Well, I make people hungry because I'm such a snack, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I think, like, the bombing, it's an important point, like it's an important parallel to point out, because in the case of Hamas, people have this assumption, right, that, oh, we're just going to be able to eradicate them. Like, Israel's able to do that. And it's like, well, Israel doesn't really seem to have the stomach for the multi-year operation that would actually require. What they're doing instead is just like trying to do as much damage. I mean, this is my perspective, until somebody says stop. You know, the like, that's where it's like the difference here is that what makes this arguably, you know, like in a certain sense worse, was that the North Vietnamese had, for all intents and purposes, won. After, you know, Tet Offensive in 1968, the Vietnam War had essentially been lost. Like, there was no military victory was broadly understood as no longer possible based on what America was willing to put into the war. With that determined, you know, like what this ended up doing, this was Kissinger and Nixon saying, well, actually, we can really win this thing if we just do it our way. And, you know, it didn't do that. You know, as the freeze frame says, it just brought more pain. Like, that was it. And the North Vietnamese, you know, repeatedly, I have an article that'll come out, I think, tomorrow or the day after, where I go in a little bit more detail on this. But, like, the North Vietnamese understood that this was what they were doing. But it was just like, you know, what were they going to do? Concede things that they had already won and that they knew if they waited out? Like, you know, it's a common problem that, like, America has faced. They underestimate the power of, we live here as a, you know, incentive to hold on in negotiating.
Yeah.
Resulted in more pain, more death, and more destruction. And yet, this is where the story takes an insane turn. The next year, Henry Kissinger was given a Nobel Peace Prize for brokering the...
Yeah, only insane if you think, like, the institution means anything, really.
Wait, hold on. Hit play. I want to see if he says the full thing here.
Ceasefire in Vietnam. An award given to him for ending a war that didn't actually end. An award that his North Vietnamese counterpart would decline. Two members of the Nobel Peace Committee resigned in protest because of this.
It is as if everyone at the Olympic Stadium joined in carrying an athlete on their shoulders in an endless triumphal procession, without pausing to realize that, in fact, he had won no gold medals at all.
And Kissinger himself even felt weird about this.
Why Buckley? To use there, I wonder. I mean, I guess he's so eloquent.
Well, no, I mean, it is like he's a figure. Like, Buckley and Kissinger had, like, I'm curious. Like, it's an interesting. Like, I think it's a good like drop. But there's backstory there. Like, with Buckley and Kissinger. Kissinger used Buckley he went to Buckley a lot to lobby for Nixon's policies and used him as a conduit to the wider press. The conservative press specifically.
Buckley is I guess, Tucker Carlson of the era.
No, he's more than that, in the sense that, like Tucker Carlson is he's a one-man show. He promotes himself. He's got his shtick. But, like, Buckley, you know, he built a magazine. You know, it's always been a money loser, blah, blah, blah. But, like, he sought to, you know, he fashioned himself as somebody who was like an institutional influence. If, you know, the Republican Party president comes to you and says, I need you to stand with me, you know, from attacks from the right on my Vietnam policy, then Buckley would do that. But also Buckley knew that, you know, when there was like, when you know, the thing was lost. Like, he wasn't, I think that was one of the other things with like the Vietnam policy that was hard for even a lot of conservatives to fathom from the outside, which was that, like, you know, why are we doing this thing half-assed? Like, why are we why aren't we committing more to it if we're going to do this? So yeah, like, it's that sort of, like, Buckley he was more of an instrument than a font of ideas in this moment.
And offered to give the medal back to the committee. Okay, this is one of the great parodies of the modern era that this ever happened, but it doesn't end here. In Chile in 1970, Kissinger directed the CIA to destabilize the country and seek to overthrow its recently elected socialist president. The coup attempt failed here, but it eventually did lead to the assassination of a Chilean general. The president was eventually overthrown and replaced by this Chilean general who would go on to kidnap, murder, and torture his political opponents. But because he wasn't a communist, Kissinger turned a blind eye.
That is the most egregious use of passive voice that I've ever heard in my entire fucking life.
I mean, like, I don't think he's trying to say that the CIA didn't do it, but it's just like no. This is what I mean. He is literally doing that. I mean, but the thing that more bugged me was that he said in 1970, and then he has a photo up of Kissinger and Gerald Ford, who wasn't president until 1974. I'm just like, listen, CIA guys, if you're editors, if his editing team is watching this, you know, come on, do better.
In fact, one of the features of Henry Kissinger during his time was cozying up to dictators all around the world, all in the name of securing America's place as the global superpower.
Yeah, he has done a video on coups where he literally said that there wasn't enough evidence to say that the CIA orchestrated the coup in Chile.
Wow.
That's why I'm saying,
cute.
like, his.
I mean, it's funny because like the general that he talks about, like the killing of Renee Schneider, was like, that was literally a CIA operation. I've looked at the files of Tony Sforza, the control agent who ran that operation. Like, it's just so funny. But yeah, whatever. Go on.
No, that's what I was trying to say, is that like the way that this insidious propaganda works is that you have to be like somewhat critical. You have to be somewhat critical of like what the CIA has done, as long as they've like kind of declassified it, and as long as like people kind of understand, you know what I mean, that it was like bad. But if there isn't a letter that specifically says like, hello, we are interested in doing a coup and putting Pinochet in power in a declassified document, these guys will always turn around and be like, oh, well, there's no literal evidence, you know?
Yep.
Like, he made it seem like the coup that occurred was, you know, and Allende just like kind of magically perished on his own as a series of unforeseeable events.
What was like what's the thing that people put on like Instagram now when they don't want to say killed or whatever? Unalived. Yeah, he unalived himself.
Yeah.
He pledged his support for this Indonesian military dictator as he was invading East Timor using American weapons. We have this declassified document of the conversation between Kissinger and this military dictator. Kissinger telling this military...
Like, what do you need more to just, like, literally fucking draw the line perfectly? Like, even that, in my opinion, is, like, kind of passive voice. It's like, oh, this guy, rugged anti-communist dictator we placed in power and trained its forces to do like the worst amounts of torture and violence, then gets greenlit to go and invade East Timor, which of course also has a communist movement at the time. Like, how does that, like, what do you mean? It's just a direct involvement there. There's direct American involvement at that point.
Well, but
like,
this is the thing where it's like, you can't, you know, like, it's difficult for Americans to accept that, like, look, like, yeah, like that was it. You're right. Like that was it was Chileans leading that Chilean coup. It was, you know, or it's Indonesians that are invading East Timor. But as the ones with the preponderance of power, we know what we're fucking doing when we let those people do those things, or we don't let certain people do certain things.
Or when we arm them.
Exactly. You know, so there's, I mean, we hold that standard of other people. So I think it's always like people are just trying to cover their asses a bit about, you know, like they, you know, saying something to, like it's just a way to, you know, to me it just feels like softening the blow of realizing how often we're the bad guys in history. That's all.
I do think it's successful though, because there are so many people out there that adorn the aesthetics of like radical politics, but then turn around and routinely say like, oh, Hasan, your arguments they're campist. This is the new thing that they love saying. You're campist. You're just like America bad guy. You don't have any like thought behind it. You just say America bad. And I think it's like a position that they take because they don't want to say America good, because that'd be embarrassing to have the politics of your grandparents. Like, that's yuck. It's gross. It's embarrassing. You're new. You're an anarchist. You're radical. You're a radical leftist of sorts. But you also want to defend NATO. You just kind of get on the defensive and say, well, some of these coups occurred on their own, and America's involvement in them is questionable.
Yep.
Military dictator to move fast on his invasion and to not be too obvious about the fact that he's using US military weaponry in support. The dictator did move fast and soon was exterminating hundreds of thousands of people. Kissinger and his big powerful apparatus standing by to watch what they had sponsored. While illegally bombing Cambodia, Kissinger also oversaw illegal bombings in Laos. He supported Pakistan in their genocide against Bangladesh. He supported Turkey as they invaded Cyprus. He helped kick off U.S. dependence.
You know, Henry Kissinger, Not all bad. No, I'm just kidding.
Dependence on Saudi Arabia for oil in exchange for selling them weapons, a relationship that we're still bound to today. He supported coups and death squads across Latin America, and the list goes on and on and on.
I won't have it from him that he's doing this against communism. It's just another of the constituents of the gigantic lie that constitutes his reputation. He's a thug, and a crook, and a liar, and a pseudo-intellectual, and a murderer, okay? All of those things are factually verifiable. Factually verifiable.
I mean, listen, it was the Cold War. Like, again, none of us can really capture what that was like. You had
come on, dude. It's just the Cold War, dude. We don't know what the real fears are.
I mean, honestly, by the way, that's a very Kissinger argument, because Kissinger believed that history and facts were fundamentally unknowable. And so thus the only way to proceed through the world was to just fully concentrate on making your own reality as you wanted it. You know, when somebody ever tells you like, oh, you can't know what it was like, like, just know that that's what Henry K. has said at some point, that exact formulation. Hitler
it's funny to say that. It's funny to say that in 2023, like after he died. Oh, we just didn't know. We didn't know what it was like. We don't know what the vibes were.
He just died. We can't know what it was like, even though this guy literally just died hours ago.
Yeah, no, it's just how could we ever figure out what his mindset was like? Well, I mean, bitch, he wrote about it. Like, it's not like he was very unrepentant. He never really thought that anything he did was wrong, including all of this stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, he did something very smart, which was that he did three things that were really smart. The first was that he published so much stuff and has generated so much like paper about his career, and so much that like it's just very hard to pin him down. Like, it's kind of notorious that way. And then the second thing is that he lied a lot as he was doing stuff or buried it. Like, if he could do something in secret, he did it. And so a lot of what, exists in, say, like State Department cables or history got to be taken in perspective with other information always, because you never knew what this guy was doing. He may be having an official overture and being in the cables talking to somebody in, between state and the government in France, but then he's probably got like a secret connection going that's actually where the real talks are going on with some French nuclear scientist and the head of their intelligence service or something. He was always doing shit like that. The last part of it, I think, was that like he actually, no, I think those two kind of cover it.
Yeah. There was another thing I wanted to say, but now I'm forgetting. All right, let's just continue. He's like,
two
this is the heel turn now, though, from the video.
Racing to see who could get more nuclear weapons. There was real fear here, and leaders had to make very difficult decisions. Defenders of Kissinger see all of this behavior that I've listed as just a leader living in the Cold War, having to do.
Yeah, when Henry Kissinger said we need smaller tactical nukes. Well,
it's just also like such a we're not even going to pretend like for because that's not what they believe. Also, like they believe that a lot of these things were defensible. Whatever. Like, hey, I want to see him play this out before I go.
What it takes to avoid nuclear conflict or a communist takeover. A vital elder statesman serving America and making impossible decisions along the way. But the most vociferous critics tend to see the opposite. An evil genius who was given the full arsenal of American power, which he then wielded to achieve his grand vision of how the world should look. But when you look
at a grand vision.
No, he was a belligerent psycho, and they just like kind of
through temperature. There's literally a famous article in the prestigious academic journal Diplomatic History that is called, I think it's called The Emotional Statesman or The Emotional Henry Kissinger. He was known for whatever.
The only thing that he was good at was literally sucking ass. Okay, he was great at brown nosing, fair, which he called networking, which is like light treason.
I love that networking. That's not a skill. That's not a real thing. If I ever hear anybody like, you're dead to me. You're done.
He was a schmoozer. He was a networker. Fine, that part is true. But the idea that like he's a small being who was doing complex things because he's like, his critics do not pan him as an evil genius. His critics just pan him as evil and a belligerent fucking asshole.
He literally just played a clip from Christopher Hitchens where Hitchens calls him a pseudo-intellectual. It's just like the content of this video has been pretty much fine. It's just that like this guy is, whenever he has to express an original thought, it feels like sculpted from the clay of like stupid.
Yeah, that part is ridiculous in my opinion, and also on top of that, the idea that like, you know, he was genuinely conflicted at the time, and truly was operating on what he thought was best. When even that part is like he basically destroyed that argument when he talked about the Vietnam War and its extension. Like, you can't say that you did it because you legitimately are interested in like changing the world in your vision, if you even have one to begin with, while simultaneously being like, we extended the Vietnam War for like personal gain right then and there.
Let's give this guy an out.
Henry Kissinger's career, neither of these characterizations hold. He was not a master strategist or an unparalleled genius. In
this
fact,
false dichotomy
he's a guy full of contradictions.
And instead,
he conspired to extend the Vietnam War despite thinking that the war was foolish. He joined the Nixon White House despite long maintaining that Richard Nixon was not presidential material. He orchestrated these increased bombings of Vietnam and Cambodia despite all evidence indicating that the U.S. could not win this war. A reminder that Henry Kissinger
those aren't contradictions. Those are just facts. Those are just
being
facts.
A Jew in
also
Nazi
being
Germany.
beaten up for his
What? Dude, what is happening? Henry Kissinger himself has regularly fucking shit on his like own personal Judaism and his own personal Jewish background. What the fuck? I think he's like the prototypical Zionist that went to America and was like, I just love America. I'm a big fan of America.
Yeah, and also what's my experience as a refugee from Weimar Germany? Power will win. You know. Like it just seems like this guy is working overtime to right now avoid drawing any conclusions about the story that he just told.
It's pretty funny to say this about a dude who literally said, despite the curse of my like Jewish background, like being born as a Jew, despite the curse of being born as a Jew, like if it wasn't for that, I would have probably also been anti-Semitic because
I think that one was a pretty good joke, but in general, I do think he just didn't give a shit. I mean, what he really didn't care about was like when he saw that there were Jews who were in his way, he would be the most anti-Semitic person right along there with Nixon. He just like, he didn't give a fuck about like the specifics of his being Jewish. To the extent that it informed him, it was like, yeah, I fled Weimar Germany, and what that tells me is that the only thing that matters is power. And Israel is a fact, so we'll protect Israel. But by and large, you know, let's do it. Like when he gets sworn in as Secretary of State, he does that whole America is only one country in the world where a story like mine can have. You know, it's just like he's. And by the way, that accent, it got thicker over the years, you know? Like he's. Like this guy is just buying the bullshit that Kissinger was selling about himself to make, you know, whatever. We'll see. Give him another minute. Let's see what goes.
Up for being a Jew in Nazi Germany. And then he fled that brutality to come to the United States, where he studied how power works between countries, but also between people. He used those skills to navigate himself into standing in the most powerful places in the world, next to the most powerful people in the world, the most powerful military in the world at his disposal, and the permission to use it as he saw fit. Henry Kissinger knew what it took to stay on top. And what it took was shifting alliances, secret bombing campaigns, sabotaging peace talks, supporting dictators abroad, and the list goes on. I guess the point here is that Henry Kissinger's master guiding principle was to have no guiding principle. He infused that into his leadership, into his decisions, leading to the destruction of many lives around the globe.
I agree with that.
Ripples that are still felt today. Even if Henry Kissinger were still alive, I believe he would never face true accountability for his actions. He played the game too well. He's too liked.
I don't think this video was as bad as the way chat presented it to me. I'll say
yeah, I think it's fine.
Controversial opinion. There are a couple moments where it's like he could have been more critical, but other than that,
yeah, no. I think it's fine. People. CIA, Johnny Harris. You're mostly okay by me on this one. I'm sure I will come across you later.
But ultimately, if we can learn anything from this,
I gotta run. I'm going to the Nick game.
The death of Henry Kissinger gives us an opportunity.
All right, well, Noah Kulwin, thanks so much for coming on. What do you want to promote before you leave?
Blowback Season 4 is now in wide release. It is available wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes every Wednesday. Episode 4 just came out. We got 6 more weeks. There's merch. Go to blowback.show. You'll get all the details on all of that. And that's about it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Noah.
Always a pleasure. Peace, bro.
Bye. All right. That was Noah Kulwin of the Blowback podcast. Johnny Harris, you killed it. Now please strangle me. What the fuck? Jesus Christ. Calm down. I don't think that this was as bad. You guys definitely massaged it. You guys definitely fucking hit this like as though it was the worst thing I've ever seen from him, which I should have considered. I should have been more critical of the comment. I should have been more critical of the comments from the chat, because like this is Henry Kissinger is exactly the type of motherfucker who like Johnny Harris will say is bad. You know what I mean?
Need to appreciate what can happen when too much power is concentrated in the hands of one man.
Yeah. By the way, Noah wouldn't let me finish, but the best part is when Kissinger said, any people who's been persecuted for 2,000 years must be doing something wrong. That's a joke. And Noah is right. That is a funny joke. It's just that the very same people that like now defend his legacy would never consider that to be a joke. Would take it 100% seriously if it wasn't. Yeah. It was a joke? Yeah, of course it was a joke. It's like some of you literally don't know a single Jewish person, I think. Not only is that a joke, but also it's like a very Jewish joke to make, like an in-group joke to make. It's very. On the other hand, he told Nixon that he's one of the good Jews. Yeah, I mean, a lot of his relationship with Richard Nixon is just like that. Anyway.
Thank you all for watching.
No, he already finished it. He said, thank you all for watching. The part that's not as much as a joke is when he said, even if the Russians did a Holocaust on Russian Jews, it's not in America's interest to help them. Where he said it's not a matter of American policy or something along those lines. Anyway.